Hey everyone, figured I'd do a quick video to answer a question that someone just sent me on Facebook Messenger, which is, I put it in the video description, which is curious why Bitcoin's having a bit of a downturn when the halving is just around the corner. Wouldn't everybody be buying it in advance of the halving? Great question, great question, great question. Okay, so when you have an asset that is 100% based on supply and demand, which frankly every asset is based 100% on supply and demand, and when that is a global asset, then it's subject to supply and demand pressures from a million different things. So first off, there's only probably, between 1% and 5% of the world owns Bitcoin or has any idea what it is, how it works, et cetera, et cetera. So you're dealing with a relatively small percentage of the population. Next, it's a global asset that trades 24/7. And then you combine that with the fact that every single person who is buying or selling Bitcoin has lives with a million things going on in them. They have capital needs that are unforeseen. There's wars in other countries. And so when anything happens anywhere in the world, most of the time, you don't even know about it because it's affecting people that are not you. And so the supply and demand dynamics of Bitcoin is constantly responding to the supply and demand dynamics of all of the people who are buying and selling anywhere in the world. And oftentimes that has nothing to do with Bitcoin. For example, the dust up between Iran and Israel has absolutely nothing to do with Bitcoin. But lots of people who hold Bitcoin, every time anything happens in the world, they get spooked and they sell whatever they have. It has nothing to do with Bitcoin. They just sell anything that they have to sit in US dollars, which of course I think makes no sense, but they have a right to do that. It's their assets. So all that to say, it doesn't take much to cause people to spook. And when people spook, they sell stuff and that's just the way it works. So that's going on all the time. You've got major, high net worth people, millionaires and billionaires buying and selling Bitcoin based on their own personal needs, which may or may not have anything to do with Bitcoin. And then the interplay of all of those things causes the price to do what it does, which is it goes a little all over the place. Sometimes it's predictable, sometimes it's not. Additionally, you've got traders. There is nothing wrong with traders and speculators. They are part of what creates a dynamic marketplace, but they do amplify swings. A lot of traders of any asset, not just cryptocurrency, but any asset, trade on momentum. So when something starts going down, they sell, and when something starts going up, they buy, which of course makes the price swings even more amplified because they tend to trade with the momentum. And if you want a stable price of something, obviously the more people that are trading in the direction it's already going, the less stable it's going to be. In addition to that, a lot of traders are trading with margin, meaning they are trading with borrowed money, which is almost universally a stupid idea, but people do it. The problem with trading with margin is the amount of the price affects whether you are forced to sell or to buy an asset. So oftentimes, when you're trading on margin, you can get a margin call, or you can get liquidated if you don't have enough of a reserve. And so oftentimes when the price of something starts going down, you get a cascade of margin calls, and people who were leveraged up too high suddenly are forced to sell to cover their short positions, or people who were leveraged to buy long, if the price goes against them, it essentially amplifies the swing in the wrong direction. So anyway, all of those things come into play. People who have needs unrelated to Bitcoin, the vast majority of people who know nothing about Bitcoin, and people are coming to the market buying and selling all the time, combined with international events that have nothing to do with Bitcoin, but do result in a significant impact on whether people feel spooked or whether they feel confident. All of that combined with how people are feeling about literally every other asset they could possibly buy, because you have to remember every single dollar that could possibly buy or hold Bitcoin is being competed for by every single other good or service in the entire world that could possibly use that same dollar. And so, if somebody wakes up today and, every time I use my Coinbase debit card to make a tiny little purchase, it has an impact on the price of Bitcoin worldwide. Now, that impact is probably 1/1,000,000th of 1 penny, but it has an impact because every single buy or sell in the entire world for a global asset has a microscopic little impact on on the price of that asset, which is part of what makes it so cool. Is it's a global asset. It's not like Tesla stock or Amazon where it trades primarily in the United States, for example. So anyway, just keep that in mind. The other thing specifically about the halving is why would the price not be going up in advance of the halving? Well, part of the current price does reflect the upcoming halving. There's no way of knowing how much, but some of it's already priced in. I would argue most is not. And the other reason is everybody's trying to guess what the impact of the halving will be, how soon that will phase in, whether there will be a dip before or after the halving. And when you have a million people trying to guess what's going to happen, the price often does, uncharacteristic things. So, for example, perhaps the Israel and Iranian dust-up, perhaps that would have pushed Bitcoin's price $10,000 lower than it is today. But because of the halving, it's $10,000 higher as a result. And again, you don't know what it would have been if it weren't for the halving, etc. And then every time there's a halving, everybody speculates what the impact will be and when's the right time to buy. And it's a myriad of forces interplaying. And that's just the way it is. Last comment I'll make on this was, it was hilarious because the Bitcoin ETFs, everybody had known for a couple months in advance of the Bitcoin ETFs that they were going to get approved by the SEC. I mean, basically anybody in the know knew that we were on track for an SEC approval in early January. And so, especially in the days leading up to it. So, well, if you'll remember, when the ETFs came out, the price was in the 30s, and then it had worked its way up into the 40s by the time the ETFs actually started trading. And everybody was debating on Twitter, endlessly, about whether the price was priced in. It was basically a preview of the halving where everyone was debating whether the price was already baked in, why the price wasn't higher as a result of the demand from the ETFs that everybody knew was coming. And then, the ETFs launched, and initially the price spiked up to $49,000. Then it dropped in the next couple of weeks down to $38,500. And then it very quickly climbed back into the 40s, then into the 50s, then into the 60s, then into the 70s. And so then we set an all-time high in the last month at nearly $74,000. So now and then someone will go on Twitter and, post as it relates to the current Bitcoin price, wow, it looks like the ETFs were not baked in. The price was not baked in. Well, of course the price was not baked in because the price is radically higher than prior to the launch of the ETFs, when literally everyone in the entire world knew the approval of the ETFs were coming. And so anyway, it's just the way it is. I don't know why everybody on the planet did not expect the ETFs demand to be what it was. The demand from the ETFs was exactly what I thought it was. And it seemed obvious to me that a bunch of other people should have seen that as well, but for a bunch of different reasons, they didn't. It's just everybody's guessing on these things, and, nobody knows. Now, in the case of the halving, we actually have 3 historical examples where the price radically increased. So you could argue that it should be a lot more obvious to everybody that that's going to happen because it's 100% historical. But again, it would not surprise me if we get a huge price rally and everybody on the planet says, wow, I should have seen that coming. It's the 4th time in a row. It's like, well, why didn't they see it coming the 3rd time in a row? Why didn't they see it coming the 2nd time in a row? Even the first time, supply and demand dynamics would have told you it was coming. So it's just human nature is a strange thing. So what should you expect? Well, first of all, the price is going to do whatever it's going to do in the near term. Could go up, could go down. It's not like the drop from 900 new coins a day to 450 coins a day. It's not like the effect is going to be immediate, but it does really compound over time. If you can imagine, suddenly there's, day one, 450 Bitcoin less in the marketplace than people were anticipating, or at least than the demand supply dynamics would have otherwise reflected. And then day 2, that's another 450, so another $28 million, and just keeps going and going and going. And eventually, after a series of weeks or months, when people go to buy Bitcoin, they're like, wow, there is way less Bitcoin for sale. Because obviously at 450 a day, it really starts to build up over a long enough time period. And pretty soon, it just gets harder and harder to find people that will sell Bitcoin at a given price. Now, in the near term, the price still is going to be volatile. It's going to go up and down by 10% or maybe even 15% or maybe 20% in an extreme situation. But all that matters is the long term. And in the long term, let's call it medium term, would probably be the next 6 months. I'd be shocked if we're not, certainly in record territory within 6 months. And certainly I would think above $100,000 by the end of the year, just based purely on network effects of users, on supply and demand dynamics that are relevant to any industry that has growing demand, and with the halving baked in, I think it's coming. So anyway, it's a great question. Thank you to the person who asked it. And we're going to find out, because the next, 6 to 9 months, really 18 months, is going to tell us whether the price was baked in or not. And it's going to be fun to watch. And if the price does what I think, you're going to be sitting there just like me saying, why did everyone on the planet not see that coming? Well, not everybody on the planet is in the know. Not everybody on the planet, is even aware Bitcoin exists, and the vast majority of them are not. And, and even the people who own Bitcoin, only a very tiny percent, are keeping track of things like the approval of a Bitcoin ETF in the US or in Hong Kong or in the UK, or the Bitcoin halvings. It's just sort of a niche thing. So anyway, hopefully all that's helpful. If you have any questions, ask me, and I have time to do potentially one more video this evening. If there's anything else you'd like me to do a video about, post it in the comments or anywhere else, and I might do one more tonight. We'll see. So thanks everyone. Appreciate it.